Let's talk about Raheem Mostert's contract first and foremost. How do you see this thing shaking out for between the 49ers and Mostert?
Yeah, I don't even think the Niners will ever acknowledge his request, which is kind of sad.
We never got that text message.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad if you're like pro player, but I understand everyone listening is pro Niners. So what they just want to know is Raheem Mostert going to be on the team next year? Almost certainly yes. It's like what he did when the agent goes out and says we would like a trade request. That's when you know the player and the agent have no leverage. That's the last thing you try.
Correct.
And it's basically you're trying to get public support. You're trying to get writers and fans to say, this just isn't right. And maybe there will be like a whole uprising and people will take to the streets.
Right.
But, short of that happening, the Niners would be like, well, you still, signed for 2 more years. And, I'm sorry, but it's a business and maybe you should get a new agent. Otherwise, we're going to expect you in camp. And Raheem Mostert will say, yeah, good point. Okay, I'll be there.
Yeah, that's I'm glad you brought it up. That's what stood out to me. I like Brett Tessler. He's been kind to me throughout the days, but he had his client sign a bad deal. Raheem Mostert could have taken the 1-year RFA tenure. He could have bet on himself. And he chose, and perhaps wisely at the time, get the longevity. Take 3 years, be paid as the best gunner in the NFL. The 49ers put some running back upside into that deal. They gave him a little bit more money than they had to, gave him the longer term because they thought maybe he's got something as a running back. But, man, his agent told him sign the deal. And both parties, the 49ers and Raheem Mostert, made a bet at that moment. Mostert made a bet that he couldn't do better. It's sad to say, but that was his bet. And the 49ers made a bet that they could get a great running back on the cheap. And worst case scenario, they had a really good special teamer. It's working out for the 49ers. I can't see them thinking, you know what, you're right. Maybe we should throw a little bit of something your way. It's a bad precedent for them to set.
Yeah, and it's a business. It's not an emotional thing. They're not thinking about right and wrong here. They're thinking about
right.
You signed the contract. And you said that Brett Tessler signed a bad contract.
It might have been a good contract at the time, but I'm saying if they really thought, hey, I'm going to be a number one running back on this team. If they could have envisioned what would have happening, or reverse it. If they envisioned what Raheem Mostert did, there's no way they would have taken that deal. But instead, they're coming off.
What you're saying is they should have just taken the RFA tag, and so they could have been unrestricted free agents right now.
Correct. If they thought, hey, we're going to have a big year. This is going to be a big one for us. We're going to break through. This is our year. Then you're betting on yourself. You're taking the RFA tenure. And instead, because of the injury concerns, and listen, I get it. Given how all the jumping around, I'd take the security too. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have it.
There was no reason to expect that last year. I mean, he had 41 career carries, and he was 4th in the depth chart. The one thing I think is unfortunate is clearly Brett Tessler is no dummy. And from what I understand, he put in incentives into the contract just in case he became a running back one. But what happens on this team, I'm guessing that the incentives were like gross stats, like 1,000 yards in a season. And in retrospect, that's not the way to do it because you're in a committee.
Right.
And even if you're averaging 6 yards a carry, you're not going to get there because you're split. You're not even starting.
Right. So
I think if he could do it again, and I don't know if agents do it, but you would put it in like if he averages more than 5 yards a carry on more than 100 carries, then you get a huge escalator as opposed to hitting 1,000 yards because that's an arbitrary number that teams can kind of fiddle with by not giving you any starts.